Welcome back, listeners. Okay, let's get on with our first topic this morning. I'm going to discuss fixed-term leases for public housing tenants. Again, I'm going to read out of an article, so I have to read to make sure that I get the wording all correct, out of an REIQ journal. So this is what it's got to say about public housing. All new public housing tenants will be required to sign fixed-term agreements as part of reform to tackle Queensland's social housing crisis. Housing and Public Works Minister Dr Bruce Flegg said all new public housing tenants from 1st of July 2012 will be for fixed periods of 3 years. This is about reinforcing the message that social housing is not an entitlement for life and to ensure that it continues to be allocated to those most in need, he said. We will continue to regularly review a household's eligibility and housing entitlements during the tenancy. It's important that we make changes like this as part of the long process of fixing the system. Dr Flegg said the department would be looking at ways to expand fixed-term tenancies in the future. That could mean extending 5-year leases to elderly or long-term tenants and single-year leases to tenants with a history of disruptive or antisocial behaviour. We will continue to be sensitive to the needs of our tenants though, and nobody will be left without a place to live or forced into share accommodation, he said. At the end of each agreement, a tenant's eligibility for social housing will be reviewed. They will be either offered a new fixed-term lease or assisted to transition to the private rental market if the circumstances indicate public housing is no longer needed. Okay, so that's what the article says. It will affect a lot of our community, Harriet, and I'm glad that some of these reforms are coming into place, because I have seen in the past where long-term Housing Commission tenants have had good employment in later years and have still been on a subsidised public housing property. And it is unfair, because I believe at the moment that the waiting list is nearly, if not exceeding, 5 years. So there's a lot of very needy people out there, and we need to make sure that the housing does go to the correct people.
Be an idea if I turn myself on, won't it?
It certainly will, Harriet. Yes, so that was Harriet speaking, and those little soft spots were her responses to my questions.
And I. Oh, right, yes.
But some of the things that they're probably also addressing are things like the size of housing. So you may have an older couple who have had their family grow up,
yes,
and they're still in a 3 or a 4 bedroom home.
Oh, that's
right, and they're in their 60s and 70s.
Yes.
They don't have quite that need anymore.
No.
Well, not that urgent. I'm not saying that they don't have a need. I'm just saying that urgent need where there's a young family that's been waiting for 5 years to get a house.
Definitely, I do see.
Would comply.
Yes, I do see that side. I think something. As I said, I know it's harder on the older people, but some assistance to help them move into smaller lodgings would be a good idea. But yes, yeah. I agree, there are families out there who desperately need a home.
Yes.
And I think they do need to be looking at that.
And they will be. As you're probably aware, a lot of the construction around Caboolture in the past 12 to 24 months has been Housing Commission or a government building. So yes, there's a lot more accommodation available. There's single room apartments around the Caboolture area. So the government is addressing, but obviously with the ageing population, loss of employment, it is putting even more pressure on public housing.
Yes.
And I'm glad that they are doing some reviews, Harriet. So
yes, definitely. I certainly agree with that.
As long as you love me.
Welcome back, listeners. And Harriet and I in the background have just been talking about the weather. Now, what we were actually discussing is the lack of rain up in the Caboolture Way.
Yes.
And then we got on to talking about trees and gutters overflowing and the damage being caused by the severe storms. And as I was saying to Harriet, we do need trees.
Yes, definitely.
Around our homes and our environment for
but not going out from underneath the building and up onto the roof.
That's it. Because if the trees are too close, they clutter the gutters.
Yes.
which then creates the breakdown of the leaves in the gutter itself if they're not all washed out, so it rusts the gutters out. So that's an expense to an owner.
Yes.
The other thing is fallen boughs, so a limb may break off during a storm.
Yes.
You've got insurance damage.
That's right.
And some things insurance can't cover, can they, Harriet?
No, they can't cover everything, can they, unfortunately? Or if they did, you'd have to take out so many different parts of insurance that it would cost you more than that place is worth, probably a year to cover the insurance. But some people do make the mistake of having trees right against the house. They go up the walls and all the leaves fall into the gutter. And if you're not prepared to get up there and keep those gutters clean, they're also a risk during fire seasons too, because sparks fly, and you don't only run the risk of having them blocked up with water and water running through your ceiling, and that you run the risk of if a fire comes through.
That's right.
So,
and also the tree being too close to the house causes other damage. I've seen them crack slabs because of their size.
Yes.
They do get into the stormwater pipes, so they create blockages. Can also do the same for your toilet system.
Yes.
And this is all on the expense of the owner.
Yes.
Right? So the owners have to be careful what type of trees they actually do plant.
Yes.
Because then you have to have all those things repaired. If the toilet's not working, you need to repair it.
Yeah.
Then there's also damage caused to fencing.
That's
right.
Another
So
thing, yes.
You put in a small plant, but that plant grows into a big tree. It pushes the fence over.
Yes.
And other issues like that. So
actually, I did read from a gardener once that said it's all right to buy all these plants and put them in, but you need to stand back before you plant it and imagine in your mind what that's going to look like in 3 years' time.
Yes.
Now, a tree will grow quite a bit in 3 years' time, and like you say, push the fence out, break your slabs, all that sort of thing.
Yep. So it is important.
Yes.
Look at your landscaping before you actually plant the plant.
Yes.
But when you're out looking, I mean, there's nothing wrong with buying a plant that can grow big.
No.
But just make sure that when it's out of useful life, right, get rid of it and put another new one, another little one in again.
Or maybe put it further down where it's not going to interfere with drains and slabs and things when you first plant it.
Exactly. So there we go. That's what the weather conversation brought us. Welcome back, listeners. You're listening to 101.5 FM with the real estate program this morning, and my name's Joe. Right, I thought I would give another tip, a thought for the week. And this week I'm talking to the owners, the seller. The tip is to stay away from your property when there's an inspection being done. Now, let me qualify that for you. As an agent, we try to make the buyers comfortable with the homes that they're looking at to show it its best perspectives and best points. If an owner is in a home, we can't talk openly with the buyer, ask questions, negative or positive. A lot of the buyers also refrain from looking in cupboards, which can help with the decision making, and spending time in or out of bedrooms or bathrooms. If the owner is sort of hanging around, it does make it very difficult for us to do our jobs. So what I suggest to all my owners is to either go for a walk around the block at the time that you're anticipating the inspection, or go to the back of the property, and when we're in the backyard, make sure that you disappear via another way so that you're actually not meeting the buyer on the way through to maybe the front of the property. Also, when the agent or when I turn up at a home, a lot of times I don't introduce the buyer to the seller. It's not that I'm being rude, it's just that my job is to sell the property and point its points out to the buyer, not to introduce the seller to them and they have a chat, okay? Because it's sometimes then difficult when a buyer will then knock on the door again and talk to a seller because they've been introduced previously. The agent is kept out of the loop of the conversation and things can go very sour and sales can be lost. So let the agent do his job. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, please let him have the run of the house so that he can work the best way for you and help the buyer find the right home for themselves. Welcome back, listeners. I thought again we would discuss stigmatised property. What do you need to disclose to prospective buyer as an agent and also as an owner? Because the onus is on the owner. If they know history about a property being stigmatised, that needs to be passed on to the agent so the agent can have full disclosure to the buyer. Don't forget, Mr. Seller and Mrs. Seller, that you will also become a buyer. So I bet that you would like everything to be honest and disclosed to you, so the same must go around. Okay, so what are stigmatised properties? Stigmas can be wide-ranging and include an untimely death such as murder or suicide, a scene of a violent crime, undesirable or troublesome neighbours, environmental issues such as soil contamination or pollution, and or the presence of ghosts. Okay, so now I'm going back to the article written in the REIQ journal and the relevant laws. So this will get a little bit technical. I can't make my comments until I finish because I need to read the article as it's actually stated. So here we go. The relevant law. Agents are often faced with a dilemma as to whether to disclose a potential stigma to prospective buyers and tenants. After all, agents have an obligation to act in the best interests of their clients and by providing full and frank disclosure of issues such as those listed above. This may deter a lot of potential buyers or tenants. There are no specific laws in Australia such as There are no specific laws in Australia which stipulate when an agent must disclose a stigma attached to a property. The Property Agents and Motor Dealers Act 2000 provides little guidance about how much information potential buyers and tenants are entitled to. However, agents will be aware that the Property Agents and Motor Dealers Act provides some general guidance on the standards of conduct which agents are required to uphold, one of them being honesty, fairness and professionalism. A real estate agent must act honestly, fairly and professionally in the conduct of real estate agency practice. Without limiting subsections 1, a real estate agent must treat a customer honestly and fairly. Similarly, the Code of Conduct also provides some classification as to the agent's duties of disclosure pertaining to a property, and that is finding out or verifying material facts. A real estate agent appointed to sell, purchase, exchange or lease property must take reasonable steps to find out or verify the facts material to the sale, purchase, exchange or lease that a prudent real estate agent would have found out or verified to avoid error, omission, exaggeration or misrepresentation. The steps must be taken before the agent lists the property and afterwards as the occasion arises. Agents to encourage disclosure to client. A real estate agent must, at the time of listing a client's property for sale or lease, and at all later times, encourage the client to disclose to the agent all relevant facts about the property. Similarly, Article 29 of the REIQ Standards of Business Practice requires agents to act honestly in the disclosure to third parties. Now, what that means is all representations made by a member regarding the description of a property, including the property's features, fixtures and characteristics, must be true and must not amount to express or implied representation that are false. Article 22 of the Standards states that agents shall not engage in any conduct which is misleading or disruptive or deceptive or is likely to mislead or deceive. This provision is mirrored in Section 18 of the second schedule to the Competition and Consumer Act. Pursuant to Section 18, misleading or deceptive conduct includes not only positive actions such as making misleading or deceptive statements in relation to material facts, but it also includes an agent's failure to act that leads potential purchasers or tenants to make their own incorrect assumptions about material facts. What is a material fact? This fundamental issue is what circumstances constitute a material fact, that is, a fact which may have a bearing upon a reasonable person's decision to proceed with a transaction. The leading authority in respect of the obligation of an agent in relation to the sale of stigmatised property is a decision of the Administrative Decision Tribunal of New South Wales in Hinton and Anor versus Commissioner of Fair Trading. Now, this is a case, listeners, and it's going to explain a few things in relation to a case. I didn't want to bring that on air today. I thought we'd discuss that a little bit further later on. But what it's saying is that the sellers out there have an obligation to the real estate agent to disclose everything they know about the property, including the stigmatised situations. And I'll repeat what stigmatised property covers, and it is an untimely death such as murder or suicide, the scene of a violent crime, undesirable or troublesome neighbours, environmental issues such as soil contamination or pollution, and or the presence of ghosts. So the owner should be disclosing any of those issues to the agent so that the agent knows how to deal with it to the buyer, and then the buyer can make the true calculations and or decision-making processes to either go ahead with the sale or purchase, I should say, or to walk away from that property.
So do you get many people who ask, has anything like that happened in a property, Joe?
No, we don't.
Okay.
But the beauty is that because there are so rare opportunities or so rare situations like that, it's normally the agent that will bring it up.
Oh, I see.
And
yes.
I know some of the owners may feel that it is detrimental to the sale of their property, and in some cases it can be, but we have to be honest with the buyer and disclose that information.
That's fair enough, yes.
So, again, as I said earlier, Mr. Seller and Mrs. Seller, please be honest with your agent. Give him all the information, because when you become a buyer, then you will expect the agent to also be informative and honest and disclosing of all situations to the property that you're possibly looking to purchase. So just bear that in mind, and everything should be fine. Welcome back, listeners. I'm just here to say now, Harriet, thank you very much for your conversations this morning.
You're welcome.
And listeners, thank you for listening to 101.5 and the real estate program. I do have to cut a little bit short this morning, but I will be back in 2 weeks' time, so we'll be discussing other real estate issues. Until then, stay well and be good.